Young TikTokers get invited to the White House. What an amazing opportunity. Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black.
I don't know what I said.
The first time ever any...
What are you people? We're Americans.
We are Americans indeed. My name is Vincent. And what do I always say? We're not left wing, we're not right wing, we're just right. Also known as being an extremist, also known as being a Putin celebrator, also known as being a Marxist, also known as being a fascist. Dear listener, apparently I am all of those at the same time. And none of those at the same time. How to put that together, I don't know. Maybe you guys can help me figure this out. Now, recently, it's come to my attention. Somebody brought this up to me, and I said, no, that didn't happen. And the reason I didn't believe that the thing happened, shout out to Johnny. The reason I didn't believe that the thing happened was because it was too broadly and nakedly propagandist and exploitative. And I just didn't understand. I thought to myself, our government is a lot more sophisticated than that, so they would never do something that bold. But here we are. And as King Yeti says, break it down. Inshallah, we'll be able to break this down. But apparently, guys, TikTokers, a bunch of young TikTokers got invited to the White House to have a discussion with the Biden administration. Okay? And I just want to explain something to you about TikTokers. Here's some very important information about TikTokers and why they would be invited to the White House. Now, again, I couldn't believe this when I first saw it, but it's here. And look, here's some of the headlines. Here's some of the headlines that I think are extremely fascinating. Here's a headline that described this story from NBC News. Okay. NBC News says the following. Here we go. It says, White House hosts TikTok creators to combat misinformation on conflict. There you go. So it's a true story. The White House is now deploying TikTokers to combat misinformation on conflict, and I'm assuming the conflict is pertinent to the situation that's happening currently in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. Now, here's something that's really, really interesting about the demographic of TikTok. Now, we just explained this to you a couple days ago, right? We talked about how YouTube is initiating these extremely draconian practices. These practices where they're going to take down your video. Abby Martin gets 600 of her videos taken down. They were bragging about, I think, deplatforming 1,500 channels and deleting like 1,000 videos since they initiated a new policy. We covered that with brother Jimmy Dore. So we covered that for you. They took a really aggressive stance with YouTubers. Facebook, similar idea. And we talked about how that's not a good thing, because their response to taking it down was, don't worry, we're going to post trusted sources, and we're going to funnel you to trusted sources, i.e. big media like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, etc., etc., etc. Let me show you something, dear listener, about the demographic of TikTok, shall we? Check this out. We already saw that one. How about this one? Check this one out. This is according to Pew Research. Majorities of 18 to 29-year-olds say they use Instagram or Snapchat, and about half say they use TikTok. with those on the younger end of this cohort, ages 18 to 24, being especially likely to report using Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok. These shares stand in stark contrast to those in older age groups. For instance, while 65% of adults from 18 to 29 say they use Snapchat, just 2% of those 65 and older report using the app, a difference of 63 percentage points. Okay, and they have a nifty little thingamajig on the side where it showed you a nice little graph, right? Here's a point, dear listener. The average user of TikTok is about 10 to 15 years younger than you would find on YouTube. And if you are in the older demographic, 35 plus, like at the tail end of being a millennial, or you identify more with being a Gen Xer, you're going to be more inclined to YouTube and Facebook. You know what's really interesting about that demographic, dear listener? Jacob, let me put the link. That was the Pew Research poll, and they go a lot deeper into it. And thank you very much for asking that question. Let me link it because I just took a screenshot of it. But let me link it for you guys in the chat. Okay, so as I'm doing that, this is something that's very, very, very. I'm giving you a sneak preview. That's very, very important, and here's why. 18 to 20 to 24. You know what happened? You did not go through the Iraq War propaganda that your Gen X counterparts have. It's very similar to where when we had people that were refusing. Sorry, guys. I'm combing through my stuff to get my thingamajiggy for you guys. I remember during 9/11 and post 9/11 and all the ginning up to go to war with Iraq, and I was ready to crack skulls and all the rest of it. And you had these older folks that said, "I don't know, man. I went through Vietnam. They said the government did this to us in Vietnam." And do you remember that? The government did this to us in Vietnam. And of course, I only knew about Vietnam through history books. I did not live through the propaganda of Johnson and all the rest of it during Vietnam. So I could only take his word for it. I didn't have the experiential knowledge of it. So now you got a demographic of kids who did not experience, because they were babies or they weren't even born, 18 to 24, did not actively experience the propaganda of the United States government, did not see Colin Powell with the little thingamajiggy, did not see the almost incestuous cohabitation of stories from Fox News to CNN to MSNBC, all of which was constructed to manipulate us into going into war. They didn't see that. They were babies. You see. So when you have an older demographic and they say, hey, this sounds like what they were doing with the Iraq War. Whoa, I'm not going to trust this group of quote legacy media. We're not going to trust those people because I remember what they did to us with the Iraq War. These kids haven't experienced it. Therefore, you don't have to be as aggressive with them. With the people who have experienced it and have already been burned by it, you're going to be a little bit more aggressive. Hence, we're just going to take down your channel, Abby Martin. We're just going to take down 600 of your videos. We're just going to deplatform you without warning. And then we're going to brag about it and spike the football. But with young people who haven't been propagandized, you can actually recruit them to be propagandized, and you won't have to shut down their channel. Having said that, dear listener, here we go. This is Rising, and this was really interesting because Rising Rising, they didn't comment on this. They let a guest interviewer do it, and then they just went straight to the end of the video. I thought that was fascinating. Now, I will say I was going back and forth because I had other things to do. Things are going on. We had to get the washing machine exchanged. We got a bunch of people in this crazy family, and so the washing machine died. All the rest of it, you can just imagine how that goes. But here we go, guys. Here goes Rising, and so let's watch this thing now. We've got TikTokers who are now going to the White House. Holy smokes, let's do it.
Hey guys, our friend Marshall Kosloff, he's going to be conducting interviews with experts and newsmakers for us here on the Breaking Points channel. We're really excited.
Yep, here it is.
Hey, Breaking Points. Marshall here. We are joined by Jules Terpak. She's a TikTok creator who last week was invited to attend a briefing the White House put on for TikTok creators to talk about the war in Ukraine, disinformation, and all those broader topics. This got a little controversial after the fact because some people thought, on the one hand, it's a little silly to talk to TikTok people and not people in the news media. On the other hand, some defended the idea, saying, hey, we should talk to people who could talk to different audiences. As Breaking Points people know, not everyone is watching CNN. So Julia, let's just start by, what did you think?
Shout out to Bricktown Media for the correction. This is actually Breaking Points. These are the former stars of Rising. Rising, to be honest with you, is almost entire. Well, I like that Kim Iverson lady. I like her. But aside from that, shout out to Bricktown for the correction. TikTokers will end the war, inshallah. Yes, inshallah. They will end the war. We continue. So here we go. We've got this young lady here. And she's going to explain to us what it was like to be invited by the United States of America, et cetera, et cetera. Must have been, I mean, aside from my cynical way of looking at this, right? You got to admit that must have been very exciting and must have been a hell of an accomplishment for those people because, I mean, that's got to be cool. So shout out to her. Congratulations to her. We continue.
About, at a background level, the idea of talking to TikTokers about a literal war.
Yeah, so when I got the email, honestly, it was less than 24 hours before the meeting. There were no security measures and there were no much vetting. So when I got the email, I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer. I am on TikTok a ton of hours per day. I know that's how my siblings are. I know that's how people within our generation are. It's kind of like the first general media source, to be honest.
So 24 hours beforehand. So that gives you a lot of time to prepare, a lot of time to research so that you can have an informed set of questions, or maybe that you can be informed as to what your government has been doing this entire time. You get 24 hours. There wasn't much vetting. The reason there wasn't much vetting is because that wasn't the purpose of that meeting, little sis.
Where it's become that a lot of young people click first when they unlock their phones. So to me, it was a no-brainer, but the headline to those who don't have the app is definitely more sensational than younger people will consider it. So, but to me, I think basically what you saw, maybe the SNL skit or Tim Dillon did a conversation about it. People have this preconceived notion of what TikTok is. Maybe it's prank videos or maybe it's dance videos, but every single person of the 30 there, except for maybe 2, are those who are doing commentary or reporting like content on current events and culture. It wasn't like 15-year-olds there, even though like age doesn't necessarily matter. I think
well, yeah, I understand because they don't want. I gotta tip my hat to. I got to tip my hat to the White House. They don't want silly, pranky people who can influence the 18 to 24 demo. They want people who are quasi-serious, not to disrespect Homegirl, but they want people who are quasi-serious about current events. You know why? Because those people are more likely to vote. See how that works? So this whole idea of, Oh, you guys are getting TikTokers. This is ridiculous. Like just waving this off and underestimating the power of these young people and the power of this forum or platform TikTok, I think is a grave error. Let me just say again, here's Pew Research stats, okay, about the demographic differentiation in TikTok versus Facebook and YouTube. TikTok, with those on the younger end of this cohort, ages 18 to 24, being especially likely to report using Instagram, Snapchat, or TikTok. These shares stand in stark contrast to those in older age groups, okay? So right there you could see that TikTok is an up-and-coming social media platform for a much younger generation or significantly younger generation, but these folks are serious. If you're watching this young lady, you're a little bit serious about current events. You're a little bit more serious than the average 18 to 24-year-old about current events, but you also don't have the experience. By the way, here is the link to that Pew Research poll. Somebody asked for the receipt, which I love that you guys do. If I say something or whatever, you should always ask for the receipt. End of story. That's how I feel. Okay. So there you go. So do not underestimate. This is a problem that I see that people have all the time. They always underestimate young people. And this is what I think, the Biden administration, I've said this over and over again, mocking these people, saying Biden is an idiot, yada, yada, yada. He may or may not be, but he's got some very intelligent, sophisticated, outside-the-box thinkers on his team who have an obvious coordinated strategy to influence the thought processes of Americans on a very, very large scale. Very large scale. So, there you go.
Median age was probably closer to 30, and there were freelance journalists there who utilized TikTok. Like probably 10 to 15 of those were freelance.
Well, again, the median age of the people that were there is irrelevant. What's relevant is, what is the median age of the people consuming your content?
Journalists who utilize TikTok. So definitely the things like SNL and Tim Dillon's take they're funny, but it's definitely not the situation of the crew that was there.
And like you said, there were 30 people who were invited. So what do you cover, and what do you think interested them about your coverage and perspective that made you worth inviting to this?
Good question. I want to see what she says.
Yeah, so what I do is mostly commentary content, and it's on digital culture as a whole. One of my most recent videos that I think was really got me into there was about Gen Z and misinformation. Something like infographic Instagram is really tied to how Gen Z consumes basically world news and current events, and kind of I did a take on that about how that's harmful in a lot of ways. It's, a lot of high schoolers behind these accounts who aren't vetting the information, and how still, even though we are digital natives and think that we know all when it comes to how we intake information on the internet, it's definitely not the case exactly. And that was my biggest point there, is why I went, was wanting to hear their takes on misinformation, disinformation, and how to approach that.
Right, because you've got a generation of young people who think that they have the audacity to believe that maybe what I'm being told by mainstream media isn't the truth. And we are tech natives, so, we were born with an iPad in our hand, so maybe we know how to navigate this stuff and get information on our own. Her job is to come back to those unwashed teenagers and young adults and say, no. I was at the White House, or I was at a Zoom meeting at the White House. So, no. Here is what you're supposed to think and believe. That's what she just said.
Yeah, speaking of what was the White House's take that they gave you, and who from the White House actually spoke to you?
Yeah, so the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, was there, as well as the National Security Council advisor, Matt Miller. Jen Psaki wasn't originally supposed to be there. She was like, I heard about this and I wanted to jump in, which of course, that's pretty cool.
Now, dear listener, what is Jen Psaki's job? What is Jen Psaki's job? Is Jen Psaki's job supposed to be an objective distiller of the truth? Is that her job? Is that Jen Psaki's job? No. Jen Psaki's job is to be a mouthpiece for the propaganda wing of the Biden administration in exactly the same way. What's her McInerney? McInerney was supposed to be the mouthpiece of the Trump administration, etc., etc., etc. All these press secretaries, that's their job. I'm not even mad at them. That's their job. But you can see here that there doesn't seem to be any awareness of who Jen Psaki is ultimately in the grand scheme of things for this young lady.
So there wasn't as much of an emphasis. I mean, of course there was on misinformation and disinformation, but throughout the entire thing, they were actually kind of going to 3 key points, circling back within every question, kind of pushing them. So the first was, of course, that they want to de-escalate the situation and that basically all decisions are being made based off of the want to put an end to this war as soon as possible.
All decisions are being made to put an end to this war as soon as possible. Now, I wonder if anybody is going to deal with the what brought about the war in the first place. Like, maybe if we discussed what instigated the war in the first place, maybe we can avoid something like this in the future. Inshallah.
Second was more so that $250 million in aid has been sent over the past 2 weeks. So that's economic, military, humanitarian, and that's going to continue. And the third point that they continue to push was that Russia is obviously having a tougher time than they anticipated. That's one, due in part to Ukraine being better equipped than they thought, and also just fighting harder, just much in part due to their partners and allies. Also that Russia is having their own problems in terms of logistics, mechanics, and also even, which I found really interesting, soldier morale, because they don't necessarily understand why they're invading fully. And also it's a friendly neighbor that they're invading. So just on a human level, it's just a mess on all human levels.
The Russian soldiers do not know why they're invading a friendly nation. They have no idea. The dehumanization and the erasure of the average Russian citizen continues in the United States propaganda machine. Now listen. When we went to war in Iraq, we knew why. If you talk to Ed, but again, this is what happens when you're in a demographic that did not go through the propaganda that got us into the Iraq war. Young lady, when we went into the Iraq war, we were told that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction and that they are a hostile state who hates us and wants us dead. Ma'am, the folks, the friendly nation of Ukraine was taken over in a coup that was populated heavily or influenced heavily, not exclusively, by Nazis. And these Nazis hate Russians, hate Russians so much that Ukrainians born and raised in Ukraine who still identify as Russian have been shelled since 2014 to this very day in violation of what's known as the Minsk Agreement. These people, these Nazis in Odessa, burned alive a bunch of Russian identified individuals, and there is no reciprocity or repercussions for that. On top of that, the United States, a hostile nation, is constantly sending armament to this country that borders Russia. Now, you actually believe that me, silly little me, or Jimmy Dore, a pothead in his garage, or Noam Chomsky, or Mikhail Gorbachev, or Joe Biden in 1997, or Ron Paul, whether you're an anarchist, quasi-anarchist like Noam Chomsky, or a crazy far-right libertarian like Ron Paul. When I say crazy, I mean I think libertarianism in the extreme is crazy. All of these people, ma'am, have been saying the exact same thing for 30 years. John Hersheimer, expert in the region, have been saying the same thing about weapons, have been talking about the psychology of Russian people, re-NATO, and what it does to U.S. relationships with NATO. And what you just repeated to us is that these Russian soldiers are thrust into this border, and none of them was briefed on this information. None of them know they're interpreting Ukraine as a friendly state when, as soon as they were able to have a successful coup, they eliminated Russia as one of the original official languages of that country. When they violated the Minsk agreement to the tune of 14,000 dead bodies. They didn't know that? That constitutes a friendly nation to you? And so you honestly, this young lady really believes that the average Russian soldier has no idea why they're fighting. I am blown away by that talking point. Let's rewind that and listen to that talking point again. The Russian military has no understanding as to why they're even fighting.
Obviously having a tougher time than they anticipated. That's one due in part to Ukraine being better equipped than they thought, and also just fighting harder, much in part due to their partners and allies. Also that Russia is having their own problems in terms of logistics, mechanics, and also even, which I found really interesting, soldier morale, because they don't necessarily understand why they're invading fully. And also it's a friendly neighbor that they're invading. So
they don't understand why they're invading. Putin hasn't shown up at the UN Security Councils a bunch of times and said, guys, stop with the NATO stuff. Stop with the NATO stuff. Stop this stuff. 2019, February 7th, you angled your constitution so as to get you more and more inclined to get closer and closer to NATO. Stop. Look what I did in Crimea. Look what I did in Georgia. They have no idea. Why? Because this young lady obviously believes that this entire thing is about one person. They have successfully propagandized this young lady into believing, and a lot of folks are like this. When you try to look at the big picture as to what is going on here and why this conflict went kinetic, we are taught to look at Russians as people and look at, Ukrainians as people. We're looking at Ukrainian mothers, which we should, Ukrainian teachers, Ukrainian teenagers underground in bomb shelters, etc. We're supposed to look at the Ukrainians as a whole, but on the other side, well, not the Ukrainians as a whole, because we're not supposed to look at the Donbass and the dismembered people that they shelled for since 2014. Don't look at those people. Look at those Western type Ukrainians that look like us and think like us and hate Russia like us, right? You're supposed to humanize those people, but then on the other and then of course Zelensky's Captain America with the Ukrainian flag. But on the other side, the Russian people are all NPCs. They're all non-player characters. And the only thing you need to know about Russia is Putin. So now you got all these NPC Russian troops just brainlessly marching in there, following Putin's orders. They have no idea why they're in there. And they interpret the Ukrainians as like being completely friendly. And they have no idea why they're fighting this completely friendly nation. Holy smokes. Let's listen to that again.
Humanitarian, and that's going to continue. And the third point that they continue to push was that Russia is obviously having a tougher time than they anticipated. That's one, due in part to Ukraine being better equipped than they thought, and also just fighting harder, just much in part due to their partners and allies. Also, that Russia is having their own problems in terms of logistics, mechanics, and also even, which I found really interesting, soldier morale, because they don't necessarily understand why they're invading fully, and also it's a friendly neighbor that they're invading. So just on a human level, it's just a mess on all human levels, and they were kind of really pushing those points. In terms of misinformation and disinformation, there was definitely a question on that, and they were basically just like, it's kind of like why we're talking to you guys. They weren't giving us any information that wasn't necessarily already on the table. Like, again, they didn't vet us. There were no security clearances. Everything's public. There's a recording of it that people can reference. But they're basically like, we want to equip you guys with this information. It was an open and casual question and answer. Like, they're like, ask us what you think your audience wants to know and what we can equip you with that information. But like I said, they kept going back to those three.
Did you catch that? When it comes to misinformation and disinformation, ask us what you think your audience would like to know, and we can equip you. Ask us means there will be a continuing relationship with these people, right? Like, there's some people, there's some people in our various channels that have my number. Bricktown is one of them. The last Slipknot show we went to, I came this close to getting Brick over the gate to where we were, and then we were foiled at the last minute, son of a bitch. So if I were to say to me, hey, you're going to be at the Slipknot show, ask me, blah, 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 maybe I can get you a pass. I had another friend. We were going to a Cradle of Filth show. I knew one of the members of the band. So one of the members was texting me, and she said, after the show, come meet me here. We can chill for a bit. So I texted my friend and say, yo, take my pass, take my press pass, because you can go. We have a relationship. There's a back and forth. You see how that works? So when the government is saying, ask us and we will equip you, am I crazy? Somebody reinterpret that for me in a way that says these people do not now have a line in with some department in the White House, some social media department in the White House, where they can go and vet information to verify that it's true so that they can go back to their audience, their 18 to 24-year-old audience, and voluntarily propagandize them. Explain that to me any other way, honestly.
Key points. And they were basically just like, it's kind of like why we're talking to you guys. They weren't giving us any information that wasn't necessarily already on the table. Like, again, they didn't vet us. There were no security clearances. Everything's public. There's a recording of it that people can reference. But they're basically like, we want to equip you guys with this information. It was an open and casual question and answer. Like, they're like, ask us what you think your audience wants to know and what we can equip you with that information. But like I said, they kept going back to those three key points.
Yeah. And it seems that you did better than the folks at The View. You remember yesterday, guys, the folks in The View, they had to keep looking down. They had to keep looking down at the talking points when they were doing the propaganda. They had to keep looking down. This girl was able to just spit it out because it had been reiterated so many times that she got the 3 talking points very well. Did U.S. soldiers understand why we went to Iraq, or did most believe the Bush party line? My brother, that was exactly my point. We were given a line. The line was Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, but that was a lie. Iraq didn't have weapons of mass destruction, Chris. So they did understand why they were going in. They were not confused. You could say they were deceived, but they weren't confused. Chris, let me show you something, brother. Let me show you something you may not be familiar with, because I wasn't familiar with this. We went to a war with Iraq because we falsely believed that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. They did not have weapons of mass destruction. But we went in there believing that they did. Chris, look at this, my brother. Do what you will with this, my man. Here is the fact sheet on the U.S. security assistance for Ukraine. Now, this is 16 March 2022, and according to my watch, it's still 16 March 2022. Okay? You notice here, we just sent them $800 million in security assistance to Ukraine. We cannot afford Medicare for all. We can't afford that. But we can continue to take sides in proxy wars that we created. Now, this right here is how many munitions we have sent to Ukraine. But look at this. You see right here where it says, in addition to the weapons listed above, previous United States assistance committed to Ukraine includes the following: over 600 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, approximately 2,600 Javelin anti-armor systems, 5 M17 helicopters, 3 patrol boats, 4 counter-artillery and counter-unmanned aerial system tracking radars, 4 counter-mortar radar systems, 200 grenade launchers and ammunition, 200 shotguns and 200 machine guns, nearly 40 million rounds of small arms ammunition, and over 1 million grenade, mortar, and artillery rounds, 70 high-mobility multi-purpose wheeled vehicles and other vehicles. Secure communications, electronic warfare detection systems, body armor helmets, and other tactical gear, military medical equipment, explosive ordnance disposable and demining equipment, satellite imagery and analysis capability. In addition to the U.S.-produced short-range air defense systems the Ukrainians have been using to great effect, the United States is also identified as helping the Ukrainians acquire additional longer-range systems on which Ukraine's forces are already trained, as well as additional munitions for those systems. So the difference, Chris, is that our American soldiers were lied to that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. These people in Russia are not lied to. America has been actively supplying them with munitions and superior weaponology and technology and training right at their border. You are justifying the invasion of Ukraine. No, I'm not. What I'm saying is this silly idea that the Russian soldier has no idea why they're invading Ukraine is nonsense and propaganda, and anybody who has looked at this situation for 5 minutes can know that is untrue. Only a person who has no clue what they're talking about and has bought into this ridiculous caricature that these Russian people are just NPCs who completely agree with us and have no opinion at all, and it's Vladimir Putin that's doing this. I'm sorry, you lost me. I'm pretty sure that the Russian people have been worried about this for quite some time. At least Noam Chomsky said as much. Just like Vietnam, the vast majority of young people actually volunteered because they drank the Kool-Aid. It wasn't until people came back the facade started to crack. Correct. Other vehicles, as if vehicles aren't some of the most expensive things we gift out. Unbelievable. Okay, let's continue. Let's continue to watch this.
Hey guys, our friend Marshall Kosloff, he's going to be conducting interviews.
Good question. Good question, Rach and Ryu. That was prior. I didn't even read the munitions that we gave the Ukrainians. I didn't even read those munitions that we gave the Ukrainians currently. I specifically skipped ahead to where it says, in addition to this, we have done X in the past. So all of what I just read you is what the United States bulletined, what we gave them in the past. Obviously, we all know that is not the summation of what we have gifted them. And it also is not the summation of what other NATO nations have gifted to the Ukrainians in the past. Diego loves our show. God bless. I appreciate the super chat, Diego Rodriguez. I appreciate it. We continue.
Back within every question, kind of pushing them. So the first was, of course, that
Cable. I know.
The comment section. So when it comes to a random user who can equip, while we're talking to you guys, they weren't giving us any information that wasn't necessarily already on the table. Like, again, they didn't vet us. There were no security clearances. Everything's public. There's a recording of it that people can reference. But they're basically like, we want to equip you guys with this information. It was an open and casual question and answer. Like, they're like, ask us what you think your audience wants to know and what we can equip you with that information. But like I said, they kept going back to those 3 key points.
Okay. That doesn't necessarily imply that there's going to be an ongoing relationship. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were. But to be devil's advocate, that doesn't necessarily imply that it's going to be continual. It just means, here, ask us what you want us to know, and then we will give you the straight dope. And you can trust. You see this assumption that she has that she can trust what the agents of the Biden administration are telling her, what Jen Psaki is telling her. She believes she can trust what Jen Psaki is telling her, and that is a final court of arbitration. That means it's true.
And did you get a chance to ask a question?
I did not have the chance to ask a question. My question was going to very much be on the disinformation on TikTok. So what happens on TikTok is, and a critique that I think it was like Hassan Piker had a pretty good critique, is that even if you're meeting with 30 of those who are kind of have a bigger platform in terms of the commentary and reporting realms on TikTok, there are still issues in just the nature of the platform when it comes to a random user who has never had a viral video can still get a viral video on TikTok within hours. That's true on every platform, but on TikTok, it happens like hour by hour. That is the norm. And there's a lot of dangers to that. So he's like, even consulting with these 30 TikTokers isn't going to have much of a impact, but I would critique that with the comment section on TikTok is a huge thing. Like, if you're watching more than three seconds of a video on TikTok, you're looking at the comment section. So when it comes to the comment section, what the people who are at the top are those who you follow. Just how the algorithm works. If you follow someone and they comment on a video, they're going to show up at the top of the comment section. So if there's these viral videos that happen, hundreds, even like 50K views, 100,000, up to 1 million views, even more, it kind of gives us more confidence, and like, we can comment on these and our following is going to see them. Honestly, it can be even stronger than us posting a video, because if you post a video, the algorithm.
Correct. The comment section is where the disinformation, the propaganda, or the anti-propaganda, or the anti-disinformation really hits the meat and potatoes level. The comment section in Middle America is variegated. You could see it here. There's an option when you're editing your videos on YouTube, whether or not you can show your live comment section on your replay. And I always do my best to select yes, because that's when you get all the contrary opinions and the people arguing with each other and reasoning with each other. Normally, here's a little hack. Here's a little Vinny hack. If you want to get your comment pinned on a Middle America video, it's very simple. Just have an articulate, reasoned counterpoint to my main thesis, and I will usually mine that out and find it, and then post it in the pin it as the premier comment in the comment section. Because I want reasoned debate and discussion, so that even after I shoot a video, I can still reflect and say, well, that's a point I didn't think about. So the comment section is vastly important, and this girl knows it, and so did her handlers in Washington, D.C. Dear listener, tell me you don't see what's happening here. Tell me you don't see what's happening here. This is unbelievable to me. How bold and brash this all is. And by the way, Rich Yonkers, his chemo went well. And then, and Bricktown's dad has been in chemo for under a year. What the hell does this have to do with Ukraine? What it has to do with Ukraine is, dear listener, for the last 20 years, we've spent literal trillions of dollars on jihad all over the world. We just approved $800 million to aid the Ukrainians, not just in humanitarian aid, but military aid. I just read it all to you. This is why peace is important, because that way we can channel that capital toward our own people, so that we can ensure people that need chemo get the best possible chemo and they're not financially destroyed. I'm not going to get into the financial circumstances of both of the people that I spoke about, but they spoke about their own, their chemo situation in the chat. But I wanted to bring this to you. This is one of the reasons this is important to me. I am not giving up on the Medicare for All fight, and neither should you. Remember in 2020, we were all talking about Medicare for All, especially in the context of the pandemic. Now we can't talk about that because we're too busy trying to justify America's imperial aspirations all over the world. But I'm not going to forget, we still need Medicare for All. So how about we stop encouraging people and instigating wars where good, innocent people creating the image and likeness of God are going to die for no reason? How about we stop that, and then we work toward helping Americans get health care? Because I guarantee you, more of us are going to die in the healthcare crises we have than are going to die in this Ukraine versus Russia conflict. You can book that.
Can only get to a small percent of your audience. If you comment on that video and if your audience is seeing it, they will all see your comment because it will be at the very top, whether it's this referencing them to a more valid source or you straight up knowing and saying this is an out of context video. It can be really, really powerful, to be honest.
And something I'm curious about, this is the Breaking Points audience. So when people hear the words disinformation, misinformation, it's probably going to trigger thoughts of, wait, this is like when they said from the White House that Spotify should fact check Joe Rogan or engage in other acts of censorship. I know that you have thoughts on that specific issue too.
Or when CNN said that Joe Rogan was taking horse dewormer. And then Sanjay Gupta had to get on the Joe Rogan show and take all them bullets. Because Rogan said, why'd they lie like that?
Two of it are a little, I think, separate from how the White House sees the issue. How would you differentiate misinformation and disinformation in a war context from the US-centric culture wars that we just wrapped up last month?
Yeah, so, and it kind of ties into the last question.
Notice, how do we separate misinformation and disinformation in war versus the US-centric culture wars? As if those are not the same thing, as if the United States doesn't have a vested interest in misinformation and disinformation of its own citizenry, as if the United States does not have a recent record of misinformation and disinformation with its own citizenry. It's this idea that the government is de facto exempt from misinformation and disinformation. It is not. It's not.
Because I hadn't fully answered, but like on TikTok, what I see as the biggest problem are these videos of violence that are out of context. These aren't takes necessarily. There definitely are.
Oh, you mean like Assad gassed his own people? Or like all the bombing in the Donbass region? I keep telling you guys, there's this French reporter lady. I don't know if I'm going to do a watch along with you guys on it, to be honest with you, because it's brutal. It's a brutal documentary, and you can tell that the reporter, her name is Anne-Laure Bonnel. She's French, and I know. She's probably also a Putin puppet as well now, because anybody that doesn't go along with the party line is now a Putin puppet. But it's really interesting watching her. I watched an interview with her a couple days ago while I was suffering in the sauna, and she's a different person now than she was in 2016. She's just been completely traumatized, I think, by the situation. She was in Donbass for a very, very long time. As a matter of fact, as recently as 2 weeks ago, she was still there. So are you talking about those acts of violence that might influence a person to say, well, why the hell isn't our media covering those acts of violence that are being done to those people over there? Because it certainly changed that lady. We continue.
But what it seems to be the biggest problem as all of this is unraveling online and we're all learning to deal with seeing a war unravel online are these videos of violence that are kind of framed as if they're happening within this war, but they're actually from a completely different time frame.
You mean like when they showed that airplane going over and it was supposedly going over Kiev, when in reality it was like from 2 years previous when the Russians were doing some training exercise in Moscow, or when they were showing the Russian jet fighter getting shot down, when in reality it was actually just Call of Duty. It was just Ukrainian propaganda. Or when they showed us they didn't show us the videos of violence, but the those Snake Island guys, F you, Russian ship, whatever it was. This is amazing, the lack of awareness. Like, I'm not mad at, I don't even know how I feel about this young lady, but it's almost as she's not even aware of the fact that the Ukrainians were putting out that information, ma'am. Contextless violence in video games and all this other stuff. And then our media ran it full force. And then when it got debunked, you had to basically go inside of the website itself and try to find the correction. But they paged the propaganda. They screamed the propaganda and then they whispered the correction.
And so there's not a question of really subjective like morale in these videos. It's like, is this actually happening or is it not? And this is actually a huge problem on TikTok right now. And in the comment sections, of course, the demographics are more so young, even though on TikTok, the users are definitely, the age demographic is growing. But any age, even freelance journalists as a whole are kind of like, how do we decipher what is real and fake? The comment sections aren't really helping with that right now. And that's the biggest misinformation, disinformation that I am concerned about. There are definitely takes on it too, but I would say that that's the biggest problem on the platform that we need to hit.
Another question is, and this is a controversy that I'd love for you to talk about, how do you get access to White House resources, which is genuinely important? I think this is a huge step for independent media / independent creators. How do you prevent yourself from just being used as a talking points receptacle. It's easy to say, oh my gosh, Jen Psaki's here. I'm just going to repeat whatever she says about skepticism. So I hear there's been some controversy about that. Could you explain the controversy and then say, how do you personally think?
You hear there's been some controversy. Yeah, al-Nabayan. Salam alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Now, let's see what she has to say, okay? Because this guy's saying, hey, you could just be used as a propaganda tool by the U.S. government. So that's a good question to ask. That's been going around. So let's see how she responds, inshallah.
Creators or just anyone in general should think about that.
Yeah, I mean, we all need to use our critical thinking. We went in with wanting to represent our audience in terms of the questions. I think the answers that they gave us were, again, they weren't very subjective. It's like, we sent this much money and this is what it is for economic, military, humanitarian aid. They made it very clear that they just want to de-escalate the situation, and maybe more subjective in terms of why Russia is having a tougher time. Maybe that was a more subjective approach. But at the end of the day, how all of us approach I mean, I can't speak for everyone, how I observed many of those that were there who approached their content is that we're putting hours of research into a lot of these 1 to 2 minute videos that we're putting up. Not everyone, I will say that, and I don't know everyone, but I would say I know half of the people there, and all of these people are very much, I don't know if I want to say like independent thinkers, but very critical in their content. You know, you have the responsibility of an audience. And at the end of the day, like, just still approaching this White House briefing and the information we learned there as you would every day with your content on the platform.
Okay. So I want you to understand that she believes she's not being used because the U.S. government gave her objective metrics by which they're supporting Ukraine, for example. They gave her objective numbers. So that's her comfort in knowing that she's not being used. They got kind of subjective when they were talking about the morale of the Russian troops. Kinda. But she knows she's not being propagandized because they used objective numbers and objective ideas in communication. Dear listener, this is what I mean. Dear listener, Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. That is an objective statement. That's not an opinion. It's an objective statement. You know what else it is? Objectively false. That's called a lie. A lie is when you intentionally misrepresent the objective truth so as to influence a person's perceptions or actions. So the fact that they gave you objective numbers does not mean you're not being used as a propaganda tool, ma'am. Dear listener, if you know, there's a, I forgot the name of the book. I think it was Fahrenheit 9/11. And it was about this firefighter who started the fires and then put them out. Right? Now, if I start a fire in your building, right? And let's say my name is Joe Neroson, because remember Nero started the fires, right? And people start saying about me, you know, everybody who thinks that Joe Neroson guy is a hero is really kind of off because he's starting the fires. And then you, assuming that I'm a good guy, are shooting a bunch of TikTok videos about how awesome Joe Neroson is. And then I bring you in to have a little briefing and I say to you, hey, I am expending 55 gallons of water a day putting out fires. And you say to me, okay, that means you're not using me as a propaganda tool because you're telling me how much, you're giving me an objective metric. It's 55 gallons of water. Okay. You're not being subjective. You're 55 gallons of water. And what else? You've got 300, you go through 30 fire extinguishers a day. These are objective metrics. That means that you're not propagandizing me. And the other people are going to say, yeah, but he's the one that started the fire. So even the objective metrics themselves are a function of his propaganda because he's making himself look like a hero and he's blaming other people for the fire when he's the one that started the fire. Dear listener, listen, I'm not going to say that the United States is 100% responsible for this horrific crisis in Ukraine. After all, Mr. Putin was the one that called the play. Okay? But for 30 years, we have been expanding NATO, which is an aggressive compact of nations who've compacted to aggressively go after Russia should one of them get touched. We've got them in Turkey, and we've continually expanded eastward. And every single expert in the region has stated, including our sitting president in 1997, that this was going to, ironically speaking, reignite a Cold War between us and the Russian people, create a warm border all across the Russian border, and potentially go hot or kinetic should the right circumstances take place. And in spite of all that wisdom, and in contradiction to Joe Biden's own wisdom, we continue to expand NATO and give Russia the finger and flirt with the Ukraine joining NATO while we were arming them with hundreds of millions of dollars of weaponry. So we didn't start the fire. We poured the gasoline. Can we agree with that? We poured the gasoline. And now, because they're telling you that how much gallons of water they expend or how many fire extinguishers that they go through for the fire that they were majorly responsible for, now you know that you're not a tool of propaganda? Mind-boggling. Age doesn't matter. I was smarter than you will ever be. I was smarter at 5 than you will ever be. Yes, Ben, you were smarter than me at 5 than I will ever be in my entire life. But Ben, you're the exception. You're not the rule. There's a reason we have driver's license age limits. We don't let regular 5-year-olds drive cars, Ben, because, you know.
Because, yeah, you have a responsibility to your audience, and it also, of course, pushes back on you if you are not putting correct information out there as it should. Yeah, and just to wrap this with something bigger, look, we know each other in real life off camera, and you're exciting because you are a seemingly random person who's just started putting up TikToks, and then a few years later, because you're doing well and you have a real audience, you're getting briefed by the White House. So that's
congratulations to her, by the way. It's hard to get big in social media, especially if you're a female or you're trying to get taken seriously when you're commenting on serious topics. So genuine hats off to her. Which makes what the United States government is doing with her that much more egregious, in my opinion.
Exciting for me. It's exciting that independent people could be there. At the same time, we're recognizing that, hey, like, it's helpful that cable, I know Breaking Points, you might not like this, but the cable is there and they're actually filming on the ground. Reporters are actually literally dying and being injured, covering the story. How do you think the proper mix of...
Yes, now this is legacy media. The same legacy media who was complicit in lighting us into a war with Iraq. Those people. Am I saying who's incapable? It's not like the U.S. controls NATO. You don't believe the U.S. controls NATO? You think that Turkey, Outlaw, do you believe that Turkey has just as much influence into NATO as the United States? Do you believe that?
Independent persons like yourself or by themselves, people like me at Breaking Points / the Realignment who are slightly more resourced than you are, but are still, once again, not credentialed. But then actually the CNN and the actual press, how to see all this mixing together in a way that can maybe be healthier for us as a society? Because I think that's what the optimistic point would be.
Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up watching like NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams, like in elementary and middle school, like with my dad every night. And then I think it's like when I got into high school and like social media started growing more, that kind of died out. So like when I was watching NBC Nightly News, it's like I always associated with Brian Williams, with an individual. I was always referring to this individual. And then as social media grew and how these legacy media use these platforms was interesting because it was less of uplifting individuals. And even just like, just like when news articles come out, they weren't really tagging the individuals. It was just like, to me, I was psychologically was looking at all of this information is coming from the Washington Post, not like I was kind of dehumanizing the process and not really thinking about all of the hardworking journalists day in and day out that go behind this. So once individuals were able to start growing more of a platform on social media, it was really interesting because it humanized the experience more for me. And I was flocking more to individuals for my information, and as we're seeing most do now. And there's good and bad to this. So like algorithms kind of make it good in the way that, like me, someone random who I didn't go to school for journalism, but after college really figured out I had a passion for like just research and digging into all these things and just making sense of things and presenting it in a simplistic way to people. Traditionally, it would have been extremely hard from where I was at, healthcare supply chain, to get into a field like this. Like, it's kind of beautiful that, social media can allow this for people, breaks those barriers, but it also, there's within legacy media and those who are more equipped with resources have the barrier that is actually good when it comes to checks and balances, which is a lot of those on whether it's on TikTok or on YouTube or on Twitter, whatever, don't necessarily have those checks and balances. And it's good and bad. Like, mostly I would say good. It can be bad in the way that like there's authenticity taken out throughout the course. There can obviously be politics involved, especially with legacy media and those who own it and like all maybe the ads and everything. But I still see those issues are prevalent within it.
There could be what?
Barrier that is actually good when it comes to checks and balances, which is a lot of those on whether it's on TikTok or on YouTube or on Twitter, whatever, don't necessarily have those checks and balances. And it's good and bad. Like, mostly I would say good. It can be bad in the way that like there's, but
wait, there are checks and balances for legacy media. So which heads rolled in CNN, MSNBC, and Fox when they lied us into a war that killed anywhere estimated between 400,000 on the conservative scale to 1.5 million beautiful image bearers of God, known as the Iraq-Afghanistan wars, and then we expanded the Horn of Africa, et cetera, et cetera. Where were the checks and balances for that kind of media? That's legacy media, sis. Who checked and balanced those people out? What are you talking about? Where is the accountability for these massive major networks when they lie in concert with our government? There is none. There is none.
Barriers, but it also.
Why did Dan Rather get fired, by the way? Why did Dan Rather step down? CBS fired 4 executives over saying that George Bush was never in the military because he was in the National Guard. That was a fireable offense. But all the propaganda about going to war with Iraq, the propaganda that they try to use to get us to go into war with Bashar al-Assad, who got fired for that? Oh no, you cross one of the oligarchs, you cross one of the elites, you got to go. But lie us into a war? No problem. Where is the accountability for these people? I completely disagree with my sister over here. Completely disagree.
There's within legacy media, and those who are more equipped with resources have the barrier that is actually good when it comes to checks and balances, which is a lot of those on whether it's on TikTok or on YouTube or on Twitter, whatever, don't necessarily have those checks and balances, and it's good and bad. Like mostly, I would say good. It can be.
Let me address the concept of biases. I don't believe that it is possible to look at information without a bias. I've said over and over and over again, I have biases, but I can be converted. So, for example, the vast majority of you, if Trump issues a tweet, you're going to automatically be biased to not believe it because of previous information. I would argue that if you don't have biases, then you're not reasoning correctly. Dear listener, if somebody lies to you 99 times, when they tell you some information on the 100th time, you should have a bias. You should say, I'm more inclined to disbelieve this person than believe this person. However, if the liar tells you something that's objectively true, you should be converted for that piece of information. So, one of the things that's important to me on this channel is honesty. I do not like pretending that I know things that I don't know, and I also don't like pretending that I'm some sort of casual observer. I'm not an android, okay? Like, I'm not a programmed, like, computer. I absolutely have biases. That's one of the, for example, I'll give you guys an example. I always thought that Marxism was just pure evil. So I had biases against Marxism until I was told, Vin, you should do some reading. Vin, you should educate yourself. And then I saw, well, holy shit, MLK said some nice things about Marx. So did Brother Malcolm. They didn't completely agree with him. Then I read, Workers of the World Unite, etc., then Das Kapital, all the rest of it. I educated myself. So my mindset shifted a tad. So it is okay to say that you have biases. But what needs to happen is when you are confronted with objective truth, the information should change you because the truth is not about the conveyor of the truth. The truth is about objective reality, which is why I'm always going to try to pin contrary opinions to my primary thesis in the comments section, because I know that people who listen to me and like me are biased toward believing what I have to say or agreeing with me. So when a person has a well-reasoned, articulate rebuttal, I want that to be featured when they look in the comments. That's my understanding of biases. We continue.
Bad in the way that there's authenticity taken out throughout the course. There can obviously be politics involved, especially with legacy media and those who own it, and all maybe the ads and everything. But I still see those issues are prevalent within independent media when it comes to trying to play into an algorithm, and also you have to get sponsors as well to sustain yourself, and it can be tough. So
yes, but independent media folks can be deplatformed immediately, like what we saw with Abby Martin or the Phantom 1500 creators that YouTube was bragging about last week of deplatforming. Ma'am? MSNBC, Rachel Maddow spouted a bunch of bullshit lies. She didn't get punished for it. She's a Rhodes Scholar. She must have known 65 to 75% of the shit she was saying all through the Trump era were lies. She did it anyway. So, no, you're making a false equivalency between some YouTuber in his garage and a very powerful multi-billion-dollar corporation that has a direct line of the United States government. And has shows where the State Department or the agency is writing talking points for them to then repeat on camera. Not the same thing. I disagree, sis.
to me, I think when you want more relatability and approachability, these individuals are great, but you also have to remember that these entities with resources are still very, very important because they are more so on the ground, really experiencing these things, and also going through the very harsh checks and balances, which again can be good or.
There were independent media folks in Syria that were underground experiencing it who were saying, I don't know about this. Bashar al-Assad was the one that did that. They were questioning, well, why would he do that? He won already. Those people were not featured. Y'all saw that video where the lady was like, yeah, there's definitely a chemical scent on this backpack here. Definitely.
But it's complementary to each other, really. And I have been getting a lot more respect for legacy media over the past year. Not that there's still a lot of mess within all areas.
Oh, there it is. You see what's happened? She's gained a lot more respect for legacy media in the past year. Do you think, sis, that might have been part of the vetting process? When you said there was no vetting process? Do you think maybe it's possible there was a vetting process? Maybe they were watching you and they curated which of you had a message that was most aligned with legacy media? Is that possible?
But I look at it more as a complementary relationship rather than it has to be one or the other. And before this past year, I was more so like only individuals. But again,
right. And when you were against legacy media, if you kept that posture, I can bet you my firstborn, dear sister, they would not have invited you. I keep telling you guys, it does us no good to pretend that Mr. Biden is just he's just dumb. He might not have his rhetorical powers about him, but he's got some people in his crew that know exactly what they're doing.
I think it's complementary for sure.
Well said. Jules, thank you so much for joining us on Breaking Points. Can you just shout out your social media handles? People should go take a look at, and I'd love for you to reference the Google Doc you put together of the actual call out if people want to learn more.
Yeah, so you can find me at Jules Terpak on all platforms. And I have a Google Doc of all the notes from the White House briefing. You're able to comment on it. So when people are reading, they can consider your point of views, no propaganda, don't want like those narratives pushed. Like if you feel that way, comment on the doc and, correct what anyone said. So, yeah.
I just posted the doc for you, dear listener. The doc is right there. I went through the doc. It was a fascinating excursus. There was nothing about Yemen in her notes. Nothing about our occupation of Syria. Nothing about the NATO provocation. Nothing about the constant demands or pleas, however you want to call them, from Mr. Putin for a decade about this expansion eastward. Nothing about our violation to the spirit of what that meeting was with Mikhail Gorbachev. Mikhail Gorbachev said that the expansion eastward was a violation of the spirits of their talks to give up on the Berlin Wall. None of those were taken part in the notes. As a matter of fact, let me let me show you, beautiful people, some of these notes from her meeting. And shout out to her. Like I said, it's very difficult to get yourself a good following on social media. It's extremely difficult. But again, that's almost why this is even more heinous what these people are doing with these young creators. So here is the Google document relative to the discussion that she was invited to at the White House. Okay. She missed notes on inflation, another one she's drawing a blank on. President instills the decisions should continue to be based on being unified with the United States. Since Biden has taken office, he has worked on rebuilding the strengths of Partnership Alliance and rebuilding the strength of NATO. So NATO was mentioned. That was high-level points from Jen Psaki. So Psaki mentions NATO in the sense of we need to strengthen it, but she doesn't mention NATO in the sense of how NATO and the expansion of NATO eastward into Europe precipitated this entire situation. This is the largest invasion we've seen since World War II, but they're trying to prevent it from escalating. And then they talked about why they're not doing no-fly zones, because thankfully that would escalate to World War III. This is where you see Matt Miller's talking about how the Russians don't know. The Russians have no idea why they're fighting this war. No idea. Here's what they said about misinformation and disinformation. Where is it? It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. What efforts or strategies are currently in place to reduce the misinformation we receive from outside sources of the U.S.? The U.S. is publishing and declassifying a significant amount of previously classified information in order to debunk Russian information. Russia has different strategies in the U.S., and part of their strategy is to spread disinformation on social media and elsewhere. That's because the U.S. doesn't have that strategy at all. The U.S. is committed to truth at all costs. Also, in terms of creators, you can't guarantee that, but you can only hope that those dedicated to portraying accurate information can drown out the noise. Unbelievable. Now watch this. Range of current conflicts and human rights abuses and genocides and so on that don't get coverage they deserve by legacy media. You know, like in Yemen? You know, like what's happening in Yemen? Where the first one of the first actions that Trump green lighted was a SEAL Team 6 operation in Yemen, where we killed a bunch of civvies, one of whom was Anwar al-Awlaki, a U.S. citizen. He was born in New Mexico. His daughter, I think she was 5 years old at the time, they blew out the back of her skull. Now, that was Trump. During the Obama administration, we killed his son, Abdul Rahman, and al-Awlaki, when he was 16 years old. Now, Anwar al-Awlaki was a terrorist. I mean, I love the man, but he was a terrorist. He declared jihad in America, and he wanted to die as a shaheed. He wanted to die as a martyr. Okay, fine. You kill that guy, fine. But prior to that, Obama had to do basically an emergency extrajudicial murder of this guy and got it passed so that we could kill this guy. Instead of sending dudes to snatch and grab him up and then hold a trial in America, because he was an American citizen. But I can kind of see in a weird world where you could say, yeah, he's an American citizen. He's declared jihad on the United States. Okay, fine. But he had a 16-year-old boy. We murdered him, Abdul Rahman. And there was a woman. The woman said, hey, why did you kill Abdul Rahman al-Awlaki? And Obama had her escorted away. Wouldn't answer the question. And then Trump took the baton and killed his little 5-year-old daughter. Astaghfirullah. So why aren't we covering? And again, what were Dev Group operators doing in Yemen, helping the Saudis? Because the Saudis are currently massacring these Yemeni people and starving them to death. So the kid is Khalil is asking this question because no doubt he's got an Islamic name. And our Muslim friends, they're all part of the Ummah. So they're asking, hey, what about that? Here's the response. The reiteration that this is the largest invasion since World War II, but that yes, this is true and that independent media and those on the platform have a role to play. What we've seen in Ethiopia in recent months, the abuse of Uyghurs in China, and so on. That's the answer. That's the answer. I mean, it's just one ridiculous thing after another. You can read it yourself, dear listener. You can read it yourself. We could also, as Ben points out, Obama performing a coup in Ukraine for a moment, we caused that region to be so destabilized that even if Putin did the thing, we got to give America credit for the assist. Which again, we deployed Vicky Newland and rest in peace to what's his face, John McCain. We deployed those folks down there to assist with the already rising conflict between many of the Nazis that were down there in Ukraine, who provoked and stirred up a physical altercation with their government that eventually led to their owning the coup. So I'm not going to say that it was an Obama orchestrated coup, but again, it was certainly an American assisted coup, which we covered that when we covered Ukraine on Fire, which, by the way, Ukraine on Fire was deleted a couple weeks ago. Oliver Stone's original was deleted because it showed images of violence. Not because it was exposing a very troubling aspect to the Ukrainian government that people didn't want us to see. Nope. Guys, look. If you are not concerned about what is happening here, if you are not concerned about what's happening here, I don't know what else. I don't know what else. What is there to be concerned about? Here's what we have. Here's my belief on the relationship between social media and legacy media, or independent media and legacy media. Initially, the function of the media was to hold the powerful, whether economically powerful or politically powerful, and we know that 99% of the time there's an overlap between the two. It was to hold the powerful accountable. One of the ways that we got antitrust laws passed is through the media. You know, the big octopus. And we were being educated as to what these giant monopolies were doing to us and crushing us. And it created social pressure once we were informed. During the Watergate scandal, the media reported that incessantly. The job of the media is to be the annoying little brother who tells on you to mommy. Is one of the worst things that a Jamaican kid can hear. I'm telling mommy on you. My little brother used to do that all the time. I'm telling mommy on you. Like, oh, chill. The job of the media is to tell mommy on the powerful. You know what's fascinating? In that analogy, mommy, the one in authority, is us, the people. But what happens, dear listener, when the child, that would be the mega rich person or the politician, what happens if the child becomes the mommy and the mommy becomes the child? And the media functions to tell the child exactly what mommy tells it to. Our media has been co-opted, hijacked, bastardized, put in whatever adjective you want, dear listener. Our media has been hijacked, and they no longer work to snitch on the powerful to report it to us. Now the media works to take marching orders from the powerful to influence us to be subservient to them. And then something happened called social media. And in concert with that, we had this. We had this amazing technology. And now everybody is a citizen journalist. How do you think we got any sort of justice for George Floyd? What do you think would have happened, dear listener, if what do you think would have happened if George Floyd, what do you think the media would have reported about the death of George Floyd before the inception of this and Facebook and YouTube? It would have been 6'3" African American wrestles, beats up hero cop, reaches for his gun, but the hero cop was able to subdue him, and in the process of reaching for his gun, the big tall African American unfortunately expired. Chauvin would have got a promotion and a 2-week vacation and the key to the city if this was 20 years ago, dear listener. So with the advent of this device in concert with social media, where you could take the fight, you could actually put this shit out live as it's happening. The big powerful people did not consider that. They didn't consider that. They said, holy shit. We had a stranglehold with this shit. Then, I told people this before. I'm convinced that were it not for Aaron Mate's reporting, we would have had a war in Syria. We would have had a war in Syria were it not for Aaron Mate, the Gray Zone, and the rest of other alternative media outlets. Okay, so here's my point. My point is, since the legacy media has been bastardized, it is now the job of social media to do what legacy media should have done. So when you have people that are saying, your narrative doesn't make sense, and here's why. Here's the objective evidence as to why. Here is the video actually as to why. No, actually, I was there. Here's why. Here's what happened. And you can get raw, unfiltered truth. That cuts the agenda right out at the knees. So what do they have to do? Well, they can't let something like that fly because you cannot buy out the millions and millions and millions. I think YouTube has like 1 billion users. And correct, as Jacob is saying. By the way, shout out to Jacob. I've never seen him before. As Jacob is saying, talking about WikiLeaks. And then platforms like that can get distributed to everybody. They said, we haven't seen that before. But what happened? What happened, dear listener, to the head of WikiLeaks? What happened to Edward Snowden? What's happening to Julie? What's happening to all these people? When they get us the information uncurated from legacy media, they get punished. So now you have a platform like YouTube, and there are multiple ways to skin a cat. I shot a video about, we shot that documentary. We were able to watch it in full from start to finish. And they immediately demonetized it. And you can go to YouTube and appeal. You could say, hey, why'd you demonetize my thing? And they won't tell you. Well, they made it, they gave it limited ads. Let me be as accurate as I possibly can. So red means that you're not going to get any money whatsoever. They'll run a commercial on your on your video, but you're not going to get any money. Yellow means you'll receive a little bit of money, and green means you're going to get as much as you could have gotten with the bids and all the rest of it. Okay, I want to get to the weeds of YouTube world, but so they sanction you, they punish you to try to make you say what you want them to say. You see, there's other ways of punishing you. YouTube will, they made a mistake with one of my videos a couple days ago. They shot me up in one of the cycles, and we had like 400 people at one point in the room. They made a mistake. They said, "Oh shit, it's VIN." Okay. Now, for years, creators have been saying, "Man, once I started reporting on XYZ, my viewership just went straight down." And I'll just say uninformed people who don't understand how YouTube works are like, "Oh, that's just conspiracy theory, yada, 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 yada." YouTube, since a year ago, has come out and says, "Oh, yeah, we'll fuck with you in the algorithm for sure. For sure." Somehow the Young Turks has 5 million subscribers. Jimmy Dore has less than a proper million. I was in a Jimmy Dore live stream a couple days ago. There was 17,000 fucking people in that chat stream. 17,000. I had the unfortunate providence of going to one of the main shows of Young Turk. There were like 2,300 people. Dear listener, YouTube is clearly in line with a certain governmental ideology and philosophy. So is Twitter, so is Facebook. And what YouTube did, they recently told us, was, yeah, we'll demonetize you, but some people don't care about being demonetized. Yeah, we'll slow you down in the algo. Some people don't care about that. So then if you don't care about that and you still have any sort of modicum of influence, they'll just say, okay, we'll deplatform you then. We'll just take you off the air. If you're not saying, if you're having too much influence and you're saying things in extremis in the opposite of what we want to be told, we're just going to deplatform you. Why? Because as I said, the demographic of YouTube and Facebook are older people, 35 plus, whatever, Gen Xers or older millennials who went through the propaganda of the Iraq War, and all we had was legacy media. We don't trust them anymore. We're looking at them with the screw face because we saw they lied us into a war and there was zero accountability for those lies. So we're more likely to listen to alternative sources, and we're less likely to listen to authoritative sources, and we are more likely to bristle against any sort of government intervention into speech. So we're not people who can be reasoned with in that regard, so they'll just take you off the air. But TikTok, dear listener, TikTok is a younger demographic. TikTok, 18 to 24. 18 to 24, it's 2022. That means they were babies or kindergartners when all this propaganda shit was going on. So they didn't see it. They were not conscious of it. And they're about to vote or about to really get in the swing of being politically active. So you know you do with that group, you don't have to be so draconian. You don't have to shut them down. You don't have to demonetize them. Actually, those people are still very young and they still actually have a respect for an ingrained respect for authority because they haven't been bitten yet, or they don't know they've been bitten yet. So you invite them to the White House, whether a Zoom meeting or whatever. And there's Jen Psaki, who they see every day. And there's the head of the Security Council, etc., etc. And you make them feel very important. And you use their ego and their naivete against them. And so you don't have to cut them off. You just fill them up with propaganda, and then you say, we're relying on you guys to fix the misinformation problem. Now, dear listener, think about how that would affect you as a young person. What if you were a 20-something, dear listener, and the most powerful people on earth said, we're relying on you to combat misinformation. We need you to combat misinformation, and we can equip you, but we're relying on you to drown out the noise. So one form is hard propaganda, I'll call it, which is if you're saying something, we don't want to go out into the zeitgeist, we'll just take you off. That's YouTube. Because you got all these rebellious people. You've got all these rebellious people on YouTube who are not going with the party line because they've been bid before, whatever. Just get them off. Then you've got the soft propaganda, which is we will get you to voluntarily spout our talking points because you influence a demographic that is about to start voting or really start to get politically action and involved. And you've got influence. On top of that, okay, so you've got that and that. 2-3 days ago, The View was calling for a special department in the Department of Justice to officialize the reinstitutionalization of McCarthyism, where those Russian shills, Tucker Carlson and Tulsi Gabbard, should be investigated, was the term that was used. Then Whoopi chimed in and said, no, we used to arrest people for that. And then Keith Olbermann chimed in, Mr. Blue Check guy, we used to deal with people like that militarily. All that's happening within the same 7 to 10 day period, dear listener, on the most popular outlets in the world, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, NBC, etc. And are we to believe that all of this got triangulated and coordinated on accident? Or there isn't something very intentional occurring here? Dear listener, this is popular level hard and soft propaganda. The View, there should have been, listen very closely to what I'm about to say. We're in a lot of trouble when the View can say something like that about a person who's been sat in front of the country for close to a decade now in Tucker Carlson. And I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. And Tulsi Gabbard, who has served her country, put her life on the line with distinction. And women whose only complaint in the last 10, 15 days, what was it? What a joy. Oh, I can't go to Italy now. My trip to Italy has been ruined. Those people feel emboldened to open their mouths and declare that Tulsi Gabbard should be investigated. Then Whoopi can bring up McCarthyism. And they feel bold enough to say that without blushing. And then you can get on Twitter and say they need to be dealt with militarily. We're in trouble. We're in trouble because these people believe you couldn't have said that 10 years ago. Not because I'm against free speech, but because most Americans would have said, what? McCarthyism is always bad. Look, guys. One of my moments of disillusionment with evangelical Christianity. I am a Christian through and through. Me and Jesus have been road dogs since day one. We always will be. But one of my real disillusionment was the 2016 elections. And it wasn't Trump. It was Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz got up there and he said, we're going to carpet bomb the Middle East, he said. And then he said, we're going to make sand glow. Yay! Went all the pro-life evangelicals. And I looked around and I said, guys, what the fuck? We're going to make sand glow? We're going to carpet bomb the Middle East? I said, well, carpet bombing is that's a war crime. I said, what? You know what got me about that? It wasn't that he said it. It wasn't even the clapping. Here's what got me. Politicians know their audience because they have people who are paid to poll their audience and to get the overall feeling of what their audience believes in, etc., etc. And the fact that that man could say that out in public, I'm going to commit a war crime in the Middle East. The fact that he was emboldened to say that says something about his assumption about the people. Do you see? So the fact that Joy and Keith Olbermann and all the rest of these McCarthyites have now gone as far as to call for a Department of Justice special counsel to investigate people and use the term militarily to investigate other Americans for questioning narratives indicates something about their audience. Doesn't say anything about them. I don't really know. All I know about Keith Olbermann was Michael Jordan from way downtown. Bang. He used to be an ESPN guy. It doesn't tell me much about The View. It tells me what the producers of The View and what Keith Olbermann assume about their audience. They assume that they're not going to pay any prices for saying such horrible anti-American and, quite frankly, anti-humanity things. There are people still alive who were affected by the Red Scare and McCarthyism. But these people were emboldened to say this because it says something about their audience. And as far as I can tell, it looks like they assumed correctly about their audience. And that means we are in a lot of trouble. I don't know what the age range is for The View. But I am assuming that the age range as far as who watches The View are probably older boomer, post-Generation X boomer people who still trust legacy media. That's one arm. Then you got the Gen Xers like me. That's YouTube. And the way that we propagandize those people is we take dissenting voices off and then steer them to legacy media types. And then the younger generation and demographic, these are people that can still vote and affect us. This is the propaganda arm. All of this happened in the last 7 to 10 days. You don't think that this is coordinated? You don't think this is coordinated? You don't think that there's some purposefulness behind this? Here's the last thing I'll say. And I might come back tonight, guys. I don't know. It's only 7:33 EST, and I have another thingamajiggy that we might want to discuss together as a group. You guys can help me think this stuff through. And thank you guys, by the way, for every single comment. Thank you. Because the more participation, a lot of people have been asking me, then how in the world do we get to the truth? How do we get to the truth? We get to the truth together. We all do our research. We all look at independent media, legacy media. We all come together, discuss the thing, and then we go, this is what it looks like to me. We get a kaleidoscope of the mosaic, and we figure it out together. And is that a perfect process? Hell no, but I guarantee you it'll probably get us better results than the shit that we've been doing for the last 20 years. I guarantee you that. All right, here's the last thing I'll say. You can be horrified by what we just saw at this naked, bold attempt to influence people by this exploitative use of young people and their naivete and their ego to a degree. You can be horrified at it. I've got a friend. His name is DJ, and he and I have a ritual. Every so often he goes, "Vin, the world's on fire. Sky's gonna fall. We're all doomed. We're all gonna die." And I say, "Chill out, DJ. It's gonna be all right." He goes, "Vin, this is the most dangerous time we've ever been in our lives." I got when he texts me, that's how it goes. Ah! I texted. I said, I'm gonna be on soon, bitch. I'm in the shower. Leave me alone. He said, make sure your camera phone isn't on, bitch. That's the relationship we have. So you could. I'm sure I'm gonna get a text from DJ. He's gonna be like, "Oh, Vin, look what they're doing to the 18 to 24-year-olds on TikTok." You can look at it that way. You can look at it as doomsday, but I look at it as social media is a poison pill to the system. they're not going to be able to control this. Pandora is out of the box, and even if, look, YouTube, so what ended up happening was they took down Oliver Stone's Ukraine on Fire, and so Rumble said, hey, we'll do it. So he premiered it on Rumble. Oliver Stone is a big name, dear listener. If YouTube continuously does this to big name people, I think Rumble, they tried to get Joe Rogan a deal. They tried to snatch Joe Rogan when Joe Rogan was going through all his bullshit. And Spotify, and I believe Spotify still counts as social media. Spotify said, "Nah, we're gonna stick with Joe Rogan because they had brother Joe Rogan dead to rights." And the people thought that Spotify was gonna be as dumb. Yes, I said it. As dumb as the Bernie Sanders campaign, who retracted their endorsement from Joe Rogan. So they thought Spotify was gonna ditch Joe Rogan. So you know what Rumble said? Rumble said, we'll fit the bill. We'll pay you $100 million. This is one of those times when I say, hey, capitalism can actually work. Because there's a market for the canceled over there at Rumble. This is brilliant. So now you got all these little, you can call them mom and pop, Smurf, dwarfed type social media outlets that are saying, if you get canceled, we will host you. So I think that if YouTube continues down this track, I mean, Jimmy Dore is already, he's simulcast from YouTube and Rumble. I am going to get a Rumble account. I mean, I look, like I said, I'm small enough to go under the radar to where they're not going to get me. Okay. I don't think they are. And like I said, a couple days ago, they made a mistake and put me up in the algo. And that was a mistake, I think, on their part. Okay. But eventually, if this keeps happening and they keep trying to do this to enough big name folks, you're going to turn Rumble and outlets like it into true competitors, and YouTube at the end of the day doesn't want that. So this is going to be, I believe we're still going to win because we're always going to be the majority. And now this young lady who we just talked about is going to, I believe, because she's obviously very, very intelligent. She's a very intelligent young woman. And like I said, we know she's intelligent because she was able to spout off the 3 talking points by memory looking right into the camera. She didn't need to keep looking down like that lady did the other day. She's sharp. So she's going to be sharp enough to know, just like me, I did certain things based on being propagandized, and I had a I've never talked about this moment. I don't think I ever will. I had a horrible moment of realization where I realized that I'd been had by my government. So she's gonna have that moment as well, dear listener. And thankfully for her, she hasn't done anything she can't reverse, but she's gonna have that moment, I'm sure. And when she does, I think there'll be hell to pay. So you can look at this situation as oh, this is terrible. It's the end of the world, blah, blah, blah. But I think social media and devices like this are, and people like y'all in the comment section are a Pandora's box they're not going to be able to close ever. I don't think they'll be able to do it. And I think that's how we're going to win. That's what I believe. So keep talking. If you believe in what we're doing, I would encourage you to like, subscribe. Look, you got the little ticker thing here. It says if you're not getting notifications, unsub, resub, and hit the bell. YouTube doesn't need to do anything to our little channel, our little community. But what they do is they don't necessarily let you know when I'm live. They don't necessarily let you know when they don't give you the notifications like it's supposed to. They'll turn all those buttons off. Okay. So unsubscribe, resubscribe, and hit the bell. And also consider sharing the podcast. And that's a way that we can fight back and win. But we're gonna win, guys. Love the show. Thanks for sharing your voice and views and letting us get together like-minded people from all over the place. Liberty and freedom for all. And again, the other thing, guys, is I also believe that this is not only a free speech issue, but I also believe it's a right to assemble issue. And as you heard, the young lady talked about, where she talked about how it's the comment section and things like that. These are virtual communities. So when you deplatform these creators, you're also eliminating their community. So I believe there's at least two constitutional ramifications to what these folks do. One is a right to free speech, but the other is a right to assembly. People have talked about a virtual bill of rights. There's a lot of things we can do here. So that's what I believe. I think we're in good shape. We have stupid leaders in the EU and the US advocating for no-fly zones. These are serious times, but if you look at this young lady's notes, even Jen Psaki was saying that instituting no-fly zones over in this conflict would be bad for humanity, was the terminology she actually used. So there you go. All right, shout out to Crazy Train. He loves America. So do I. If you love America, you're gonna fight for America, and you fight for America by keeping her out of wars. That's the best way to fight for your country. Keep us out of wars, inshallah. All right, guys. Like I said, I may be back later on to discuss Russia and China. I got to check on a few things, check on my kids, see how everybody's doing, and then we might get back into this. Thank y'all. I'm out of here. In the meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.